whatever you think you can't do, you're right. Whatever you think you can, you're also right. And so it's your choice on what you do with how you're thinking and what you do next. It's really weird to hear people say that they consider me like a pioneer of the lower weight classes, right? Because I'm like, I look at the sport and I look at some of these guys that are out there, I'm like, man, like those are the guys that built it. But it's kind of cool to have been on the ground floor of every level of this thing growing to where it is now. Even though I'm not fighting anymore, I fight through people's journey because I still get to help and be a part of that fight. And it makes me keep fighting. I personally feel today that I got signed to the WEC too early. I did not believe that I belonged there. Those guys were something else that I couldn't even grasp what they were. The idea of like fighting a world champion, like an actual world, not a promotional champion.
Yeah.
An actual killer that is one of the baddest motherfuckers on the planet. I couldn't wrap my hand around it.
Chad, super great to have you here with us today, brother.
Stoked to be here. Thanks for having me.
I think we have a lot to talk about.
Usually when we talk, there's a lot to talk about.
Stop it. You're an interesting guy. There's a bunch to talk about.
Little do people know about this guy, right? Beast in MMA, one of the leading coaches in the nation, an author. What haven't you done so far, Chad?
Make my wife super thrilled to see me. No, I'm kidding. I don't know. I appreciate it. You know, it's I'm always trying to think of what comes next, and no, I'm just having fun.
Yeah, I think you're kind of that guy. That's why when we met, I bonded so deeply with you. To be honest,
There was like a little bromance going on when you guys first met.
Well, a little bit. I mean, Chad's got his little quirky little things, but I love a lot about you because you're definitely a perfectionist, right? And I think one thing I've always seen in you, you're all about evolution. You're not just sitting here content with what you've achieved. You're always looking like what's up next. You know what I mean? What's next for you?
Yeah, I think that's a programming from my childhood. You know, it comes from me always. Let me back up. Like my younger years, I was always afraid that I wasn't able to do it. I was always listening to people and the doubts of everything around me, and so that really built into my complete earlier years of my life. And I think as I started getting a grasp of that I am in control, that everything forward became about going forward. Like, what's the next step? What's the progression? How do I move forward? How do I not let a setback be fuel for everything and everyone in my past that told me that I couldn't do it?
So I just want to, when did you kind of grasp that though? Or like, when did you start, feeling that way?
What do you mean?
Like, you bring up, how you were, sorry, I'm off right now, but
You're usually off, Ryan. I mean,
Yeah.
See, my son's a little slow, but I think earlier, right, you kind of suffer from lack of self-esteem,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Like, I think what Ryan's trying to say, because he can't get the words out,
There you go.
because it's
Yeah,
not that
that's
sharp. Like, when did you realize that? When did you realize that, yeah, you're suffering from lack of self-esteem, but you can do better? Like,
Yeah, it's funny. That's like a question that I get asked a lot, and you want to
see, I answered it. I mean, I asked it properly, unlike...
yeah, you said it 5 times. Let's get on with it. Let's just
Okay,
keep
sorry.
going.
Well, I'll continue.
Okay, sorry.
If you guys are done.
No, sorry, bro.
No,
Sorry.
I'm just kidding.
It is a
No,
fun
this,
family thing.
it's actually a very interesting answer because it's probably not the answer that you guys are expecting. My answer is today. I'm today, and tomorrow will be tomorrow, and the next day will be the next day, because the insecurities are always there.
Yeah.
It's always there. And it was when I decided that I'm not going to let that be the answer, then that is when I realized that today I need to overcome the doubt and the thoughts that I'm having right now. Because I have them right now, and I'm sure you guys do too. I'm sure everybody that is pursuing something or doing things has those thoughts right now. There's parts of us that are like, I can, but then there's the overshadowing part that's telling you, no, you can't. And you have to make that decision right now. So I wish I can go back and be like, well, it was when I was 24 years old. There was a point in my career. No, it wasn't that. There was points in my career, but I needed that day to be the day that I overcame those thoughts. And so right now is the day that's most important for me to overcome those thoughts. I'm sure it's not the answer you were expecting, but that's the truth behind it. Yeah,
because usually folks, when we ask that question, we talk to people, and like in my life, like There are certain moments in time that make things click to me. You know what I mean? So your answer is very interesting.
Yeah, and I think because that's been what's allowed me to keep pushing
Well,
past.
I think you look at life as a work in progress too.
Well, it is, right?
Yeah.
Because once you finish a goal, right, it either dies there or it progresses and evolves to the next thing. And that's a choice. And that's a choice that you have to actually find the answer to in that moment. So like you win a world title. Okay, great, cool. What's next? Is that world title going to be what defines you? Or is it what you are doing with that world title that leads next? Is it the job promotion that you got? Now, what are you going to do with that job promotion? Is it the financial benefits? Is it the ability to do other things with your time? What is it? But it's what comes next. So it is the evolution, but it's a choice that you have to decide with. Or go on the flip side. It didn't work out. You lost the title. You lost the promotion. You lost the job. You have to decide right now what comes next. Do you curl up in a ball and die? Or do you find a way to keep moving forward? And I think that's the lesson that I've learned from all of this.
I think, and correct me if I don't get this right, but I've heard you yell to your fighters when they're in the cage, make a decision. Right?
Yeah,
decide.
That's it. 100%. Decide. Make a choice, because it is a choice. I don't care how tired you are. Make a choice. If you want to lay down and be done, cool. That's fine. But choose that and then stand on that. Don't get out of the cage and come out and say, oh my God, I was so tired. I don't know what happened. No, stop. You did that. That was a choice that you made. Stand on that. Be on the business side of that.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. But you have to own the decision that you made.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that decision has to be where it turns into. You did that decision. Good or wrong. Doesn't matter. It's in the past now. How do you move forward from it? And I think that's what the beautiful thing about fighting is, like, everything's about a decision. Yeah. Everything is a decision.
No, I mean, I love that mindset. It's really not even just fighting. Like you brought up job promotions and anything. It's the way a champion should carry themselves in life, whether it is business, relationships, whatever it may be. Go ahead. What do you guys think? I see your look.
That's why Chad wrote a book called The Champion's Mindset.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean,
perfect fucking
perfect
slide
plug,
intro.
Yeah,
into
perfect
that.
plug, but it is true.
Yeah.
You know, one of the opening lines of the book was actually like, why did I write this book? Who am I to write a book? Like, I am terrible at writing. I have had a fucked up career, up and down. So many things have gone wrong. I shouldn't write a book. Well, there's that thought process. There's that whole thing. And that's why I should write a book. And that's why I should get up off the canvas. And that's why I should go after that promotion. That's why I should do these things, because in my mind, I'm telling myself I shouldn't. And if I listen to that, I will always listen to that, and I'll always come up short with everything.
Yeah. I really think we all do have like that inner bitch voice. So, right? Like there's that times, like, you know, in your head, like, oh, fuck, I don't want to wake up at this time to go do this thing, or I don't want to put this extra work in, but you know you should. So it's a big part of you now, right? You're done with your fighting career. Obviously, you have great things ahead of you still, but it's inspiring people, like one thing you love to do and helping people kind of reach their full potential.
Yeah, I think that allows me to keep going. Right? You know, one thing, or some of the things that people don't know about me is, like, I'm extremely competitive. I mean, you guys know me long enough. Like, I'm extremely competitive, but it's not in the way that people think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care about winning the game. I care about winning in life. I care about where it takes us. I care about watching other people get empowered through that meaning of winning. But with winning, you have to understand losing, and you have to understand defeat, in order to understand the glory that comes from that quote unquote win. And so for me, I think to answer that is that even though I'm not fighting anymore, I fight through people's journey, because I still get to help and be a part of that fight. And it makes me keep fighting. You know, I still struggle all the time. Like, I know recently I've had my own little battles. And the thing is that I've had to put my hat on when I go to the gym, and I've got to show up for those that don't give a fuck about what I'm going through.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it does not matter. It matters in my universe, in my little world. That's cool. But that stays away from everything else that really matters in other people's progression, other people's story.
So you work with some of the top fighters out there, Chad. And I think this mindset, this champion's mindset that you have is amazing. You're trying to pass this on. But as you know, fighters are a difficult breed. How hard is it to instill and get these guys to, buy into this?
Every day I tell myself I'm done. So it goes back to the beginning of that conversation of me saying that like every day is the day that I have to overcome that.
Yeah.
Because as stubborn as they are, as hard-headed as they are, as unwilling to actually want to listen to it as they are, I have to remember that I'm talking to me. I am talking to versions of me.
I love that though.
That I was that person. I am them. And I think that's why my passion is so strong. We've talked about this. That's why I wanted to get involved with Up Next, and I wanted to be a part of this thing, is to give back to the athletes, because I did not have that. I was the kid that didn't listen. I was the kid that thought he knew everything. I was the kid that just wanted to be a badass. So every time I talk to them, it's as frustrating as it is, I have to remind myself, I am talking to me. All it is a reflection. All these kids are reflections of me. And so I need to make sure that I'm doing my best to give them what I needed. And so that helps me deal with all the bullshit, because there's a lot of bullshit. I'm telling you, right, guys, if you're watching, listening, it's a lot of bullshit. Calm down.
Yeah.
No, that's for sure. And I think one thing that I kind of admire about you and, just a lot of the other, what I call real coaches, right? That gives so much, because you're not making $1 million coaching these guys. It's not a highly lucrative thing for you, I think. You know what I mean? I think you're making a living, this and that. But for the blood, sweat, and tears and the frustration that you put in, the monetary payoff really isn't there. So what's the payoff?
Well, the payoff is the emotional win. It's the fulfilling of giving the me from then what was needed. That's the win, is because I get to see that kid every time I help one of these kids, whether it works or it doesn't. I am giving that kid, which is the reflection of me when I was that kid. Man, I'm 42 years old now, so I'm not calling.
You're right behind me.
I'm talking
some gray
20.
Hair, some gray hairs in the beard. You still look good though.
But I'm talking about kids, and it's like,
yeah,
I don't mean like a kid. I'm talking 20, 30-year-old men that I'm calling kids now. But I think that's where it's at. That's what keeps me driving, is knowing that every time I'm able to help one of them to any degree, I'm helping that old version of me, and I feel almost a little more healed every time I do it. And then one of them, does something and, it doesn't work out or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden I feel like I failed me. I failed the me because I wasn't able to give them what I needed, which that's something that I still need to work on as a coach and as a person, right? Because that doesn't mean that I failed. In fact, I was able to get them to a stage where they might be able to see things clear for themselves. And it's all our own journey, right? So like, that's kind of the pursuit. Now going back to the money thing. Yeah, coaches, man, we are the ones that get the short end of the stick.
Yeah.
We travel with people, we lose money, we do all these things, we come out of pocket, and we are the ones that sacrifice more, because we're not the ones that are going to get the glory. We're not the ones that are going to get the big paychecks. If you make it.
Yeah.
And that's a very, very, very small if.
Right.
But we're the ones that are sacrificing our time, our families, because we want to see you succeed.
Well, I think that's why things like this are so important, because, working with these athletes, Ryan, I don't know that a lot of these athletes really understand the investment that coaches put into them, and really, how hard it is on them and how invested into their futures they really are.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think some may, but I don't think everyone knows exactly what the coaches put in, whether it's emotionally, sometimes they have to put up money to go travel with them or whatever it is, because of the passion and the love they have for their students. I think you got great coaches like Chad. I think you got some other guys that maybe don't invest as much or are worried more about making money elsewhere in the gym. But I think that's so important for fighters, to have a coach that has their back and has that outlook like you do. Whether it's for the old you or whatever it is, you're so passionate and so for it that you're going to give your 110% when you're coaching these guys. And that's what they need.
Well, the thing we're talking about mindset, right? Like, how much to be a top level fighter, Chad, how much of it is actual skill? And how much of it is actual mindset, in your opinion?
I'd say it's more mindset than skill.
Yeah.
And to go back to the athletes that are appreciative or not appreciative, or do they see what the coaches are doing? And the answer is, it's very clear. is they don't see it, because how could they? If they've never seen it in a different light, they've never seen another angle, how is it like they
Right.
don't. And a lot of fighters are going through so much shit in their life, and that's why they chose this path.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of broken things in their life. And so it's very hard for them to see things that are not a broken system. It's very hard for them to see that people are going out of their way for things, because they're like, man, I'm sacrificing so much to do this. Why can't you see it? And it's like, well, that's why we're doing this. Why can't you see that we're doing this? And it's this cycle, because they've never seen it from that side. So they can only see it from their world. Yeah. And, you know, for me, it's like, I see it and it's like, I have a passion, a compassion for it. Not a passion, but I guess it's both. And that's the hard part to navigate.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, I believe in, you know, the attitude of gratitude. And I just wish the athletes and the fighters really understood more the investment that, you know, guys like you and other coaches really put into them to show, you know, that higher level of respect, that higher level of loyalty. I just think it's huge, because I am a big fan of people that invest in other people.
Yeah, I think, and that's where the mindset comes in, right? Is the mindset's absolutely everything. You have to have an obsession like with this stuff. If you want to succeed, it's got to be an obsession, because if you want to be good at any sport, in any industry, excuse me, it's got to be an obsession with what you do. I mean, you could pick anything in the world and figure out who's the top 1% in anything in the world, and you will see that they are obsessed with what they do.
Yeah.
It is not, that's non-negotiable. They are obsessed. And in a sport like this, it has to be an obsession. Now, when it goes back to the mindset and the appreciation, that's the martial arts side of things, right? You have to have the martial arts mindset. And again, I did not have that for many years as an coming up athlete. I didn't. I thought martial artists were the biggest pussies on the planet. I swear to God, that's what it was. I was like, those guys are pussies. I'm a fighter. They're martial artists. They're in their gis. They go kia, and I'm a fighter. I'm the baddest dude in the world, whether I actually believe that or not. But I know that guy is not going to do nothing to me, because he's a pussy. And that was the mentality.
Yeah.
I'm a badass. And then once I realized what it meant, the mindset of a martial artist, that's when my life started changing, because I realized, oh, that's why they act that way. It's not about them going kia. It's the mindset that they embody of the martial arts. And then once you realize, I want to be a martial artist, you start taking those pieces and that information and learning how to apply it to the way you interact with people, how you apply it to the things that you want in life, how you apply it to those that might not have it yet. And then you start like building off of that. And I think as the mindset of a coach, that is the way to get people to start seeing those values, is instilling that martial arts mindset in people.
Yeah. Totally. Well, I want to take it back. So what was your, first interaction with combat sports? We're talking about you now, right? But how did this journey begin? How did you really get into combat sports? I know you talked about, maybe not believing yourself at times and whatnot. Did that lead you to start training MMA or wrestling or whatever it was? Or where did it start for you?
I'm gonna tell you a story that
we're looking for that juicy story right now.
I've told nobody the story.
Can I get a pat on the back? I asked that question again. Thank you very much.
Good job.
I've told nobody the story. So I think the universe was trying to get me to tell me that fighting was going to be my path for a very long time. And
universe did a good job, by the way.
I thank you. And it was interesting. So when I was still living in Sacramento, I was a wrestler. A girl that I had dated lived with her parents, because we were still young. I was like 17 years old. And they lived across the street from this guy. And I didn't know anything about it at the time. And there was a fight that broke out with a domestic dispute. It was the boyfriend of the wife was running out of the house because the husband came home.
Oh, yeah.
The husband at the time was a UFC fighter. Oh my God, what is his name?
Can we name drop him?
Yeah, I'm blanking on his name. Old school UFC. We're talking old school. And this is before, because remember, so I started fighting in 2004. So we're talking 5, 6. So this is 98, 99. So this is early years,
Yeah.
when it was still no hold, NHB. early this week, and I remember this guy running down the street, and the wife's screaming, "I'm get out of here! My husband's a UFC fighter! Run, run, run!"
I would be running
And,
so fast.
that thing was burned in my head, that whole scenario. And I just remember, like, man, that guy's gonna get killed. You know, like I've seen those guys in the cage, but I never thought anything about that, other than the fact it was a good story.
Yeah.
And then I moved to LA, and then I started doing professional artwork. I was a professional artist for a long time. And I started getting into some bad things, doing drugs and drinking a lot, smoking cigarettes, things that I had never done even when I was in Sacramento. And I needed to find a way to get back in shape. And so I wrestled, like I said, I wrestled in junior high school, and college. And a buddy I worked on a film with was like, "Hey, I don't know if there's any wrestling, but I go to this jiu-jitsu school. If you're interested." I was like, "Nah, I'm good. I don't want to try jiu-jitsu. Those karate
I'll beat those
karate
dudes
pussies
up.
that I was
Yeah.
telling you, like, ah." And I was like, "I'm good. I want to find wrestling. I'm a real man. You know, I like to be in singlets, and I like to wear shoes like that. You know, like I'm a real man." And but this is at the
Those
time.
singlets are a little funky in my opinion.
That's a man. That's
That's
a
what
man
it
right
really
there.
is.
I don't know.
You know, you mess around. We're gonna take that off. We're gonna go Greek days,
I don't know.
where it all started.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I tried looking for wrestling schools. I wanted to get wrestling. I need to find a way to kick these bad habits. But it was the time the colleges lost all the funding for wrestling programs. So there was no wrestling programs I can get involved in. So I said, you know what? I need to do something because it's not good. This is not good. So he took me to the jiu-jitsu school, and there was nobody there. There was like this coach, and then there was one guy. And this one guy, I don't know if you know this name, Musa Tolliver.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Musa Tolliver who's a very good friend of mine now.
Yeah.
In fact, I haven't seen him in about
Pretty well known
You're-
on the regional scene.
dude, he's been
right?
around
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah.
And so he's there, and he looks at me and he goes, "Do you wrestle?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Thank God. I've been here training, and nobody ever wants to wrestle. Do you want to wrestle?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want to
Sure.
wrestle." Did we just become best friends? You know, it was like one of those. And so we got to train a little. I was so out of shape, and we trained, and then the coach that was there taught me like a couple little moves, and I'm like, "This is really cool." So I actually get to wrestle, and I get to like choke people. That's pretty cool. And then I remember Musa was like, "Hey, there's like this MMA thing at night. If you want to try that." I'm like, "Nah, I'm good. I don't want to do that MMA stuff. I just want to wrestle." And so that was that. And then I started coming to the jiu-jitsu class for, I want to say maybe 2 weeks. Maybe 2 weeks. And I was like, "This is really cool." And I said, "You know what? Let me just give it a try." So I went to the MMA class at night. And I was like, "Wow, this is actually kind of cool. I get to punch people. I get to kick people.
Get to do it all, right?
I get to do this. This is rad. This is the stuff that I didn't know that I kind of needed, you know, because mentally, coming from, you know, a background of getting beat up by bullies, thrown in trash cans, held underneath school buses, jumped in in the 7th grade, I got jumped by 2 kids, broke my orbital, had bleeding in both my eyes, you know, like stuff like that. Like, I have a history of constantly failing at things. And actually, the time I got jumped, I stood up to the bully. And so that was my history. Every time I stood up to something, it went the wrong way.
Yeah.
And so wrestling kind of gave me that outlet. And then when I found this, I was like, wow, this is a chance for me to actually like have some fun and maybe learn self-defense. But I didn't know where it was going to go. I had there was zero desire. I'm a professional artist. My goal was to work at DreamWorks. I wanted to use this just to kick habits, nothing more.
Right.
And about, I don't know, 2 months later, I'd been training like maybe twice a week. I don't think I ever sparred. I was learning how to roll.
Just the basic classes, pretty much.
Yeah, it wasn't. There was nothing else. I mean, I was still smoking cigarettes. I'd go back to the studio, be like, "Yeah, I just got this great workout here. Here I am." And then the coach asked me. He goes, "Hey, no pressure. I got this call. Would you be interested in doing a fight?" And I go, "Fight what?" And
just to clarify, sorry, this is only 2 weeks after you kind of.
I'm saying it was probably about 2 months at this point.
2 months.
Yeah, it's probably
That's still freaking nuts.
it was about 2 months.
And you're crazy. I said yes, didn't you?
Well, Not exactly.
Okay.
So I'm gonna do this. My wife hates this. When I start telling stories, I like do these long dramatic pauses, and I build it up.
I
And
love
she's
them.
like, "Get to the fucking point."
Get to the point.
And so, anyways, so there we are, and we're standing in this taekwondo school. It's a taekwondo school, and he asked me, he's like, "Hey, this promotion called, and they've got a guy who's only got about 6 months experience, so a little bit more than you, who's a wrestler, but they're looking for somebody to do a fight with." And I'm like, "What do you mean a fight? Like a real fight?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I go, "Well, is it paid? I'm broke. I'm broke. I mean, I'm a professional artist. And I'm broke. I'm broke as hell." And he goes, "Yeah, it's a professional fight, so it's paid." I said, "Wait, hold on, it's a professional fight?" And then I said, "Well, how much does it pay?" And he goes, "I don't know. I've never done this before." And I go, "Well, that's weird. Okay. Well, when is it? I mean, what do we got, like 6 months to train?" You know, like I never thought about even engaging in a fight. That's just weird to me. I hadn't even really watched it. I think like one of the only times I really watched it when I had the memory of dude running down the street chasing his wife's boyfriend. Right? You know, I didn't watch it like that. And he said, "Well, it's Saturday." And today was like Tuesday. It was like Tuesday. And I said, "Saturday? Like, are you insane?" And I said, "Well, where is it?" And he starts laughing. And I go, "Hold on, stop with the laughing, because you're making me really, really uncomfortable." And he said, "It's Tijuana, Mexico." Because this was at a time where it was still illegal in California. It was illegal in California. I think it was only you can only fight in Vegas at the time. And so I was like, "Hold on, so let's recap this. I've been training 2 months. I've never sparred. You don't know how much I'm going to get paid. It's in Tijuana, Mexico. You've never done this before. Fuck it, I'm in." Right? Like, and I think
sounds like a recipe for success.
And it's funny because I think when I said yeah, I think I meant to say no.
Yeah.
I think I was like, yeah.
Yes.
And I was, and then I was like, did I just say yes to a fight? I've lost almost every fight that I've gotten in. And I used to tell these stories in interviews about like me. I got in a lot of fights as a kid. I did. But then when I started recapping it, I was like, yeah, there was that one. I lost that one. And then there was this.
Wait, have I ever won a fight? Now I'm doing a professional fight? What the fuck?
Isn't that funny?
It's kind of funny to me, bro. Like, 'cause
Right?
you hear some of these, pro fighter stories. Yeah, I used to kick some ass when I was younger. You're the first guy that I've heard come in saying you took a bunch of L's.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. But I think that's what also sparked the passion, right? Like I'm sick of losing. I'm sick of accepting the fact that I was losing.
Yep.
And it was a lot of times because I went into things knowing I was going to lose, and I projected the result. Yep. And so then we went to Tijuana, Mexico, and they told us that I had a room and board. At least this is the memory that I have. I don't even know if this is true. I think I've told the story a bunch of times, and I don't even know if this is true anymore. But I think it is, and if it is, it's a great story. And if it isn't, fuck it, I made it up. It's a great story.
There you go.
Either way,
and I mean, we're talking like 15 years ago. Like I don't even remember getting out of bed this morning. So like I think this is like is a real memory. Anyway, so we go to Mexico, and I didn't speak any Spanish at the time. But I didn't have enough to know that they didn't give us a room, and I had no monetary compensation. So that was fun. So we go out there anyways, and we go to this bar called the Baby Rock. I used to call it like the Baby Rock Casino. It wasn't a casino. It was just a 3-story bar. And if you knew the sport at that time, the Baby Rock was like the spot. Mm-hmm. That's where everybody went to for these fights. Other than the UFC. And there was stuff like in East Coast a little bit, all underground stuff as well. But the Baby Rock was a spot. It was a 3-story bar that looked like every single main scene in a bad movie where like somebody died right before the guy comes out and he's got to perform. That was this place. Like anything you put in your head, that was this place. There's a ring. It wasn't even a cage. It was a ring right in the middle of the bar. And there's a stage on the side. And when you come in, if you had ringside tickets, you guys are promoters. You guys, tell me how you would handle this. If you had ringside seats, they do like you can go to the bar, come down, but your table was the apron on the ring. So you could drink your beer right there on the apron.
I love that.
And if people fell out of the ring, your job was to try to pick it up fast enough and push them back in.
Talking about fan experience, bro.
Right?
What better experience?
Fully engaged or merged.
Yeah.
Merged. And so that was, I took it and I went out there and I didn't know how to kick at all. I didn't know if I was orthodox. I didn't even know if I was southpaw. And I wore wrestling shoes because I wanted him to know that I was a real wrestler, which makes absolutely no sense when I think about it now. I'm like, he was a wrestler too. Like, what am I trying to do?
Yeah.
He actually suplexed me 3 times in the fight, belly to back, straight over his head. Wow. I think he was a better wrestler than me.
Yeah.
And
maybe suplex you 3 times. But
maybe, but like I was too stubborn to stop. And I think in that fight, he put me in a deep choke in the first round, and I don't think I knew how to tap. And I think that was a part of it. I think I didn't know that was an option, right? So because if you watch if you watch the video, it's pretty wild. I was this little fat chubby kid, and he gets his choke, and his eyes are like bulging out of his head trying to squeeze it, and I don't think I knew I could tap. I ended up getting out of it, and by the end of the first or second round, I forget what it was, the referee picks me up off the floor because refs can't do that now.
Yeah,
but he literally picks me up and he guides me to my corner. And I'm just so exhausted. I'm like, these are third round, so exhausted. I'm getting my ass kicked the entire fight. I mean, I landed a couple good punches, but we're talking hoods. Like this is like hood fighting that I wasn't good at either. And he took me down again in the third round. I ended up reversing him, grabbed a guillotine, rolled him over, and I choked him with a guillotine. And he tapped.
Nice.
And the fight was over, and it was the most insane, euphoric feeling I could have ever imagined.
Yeah.
I was like, I just fucking want to fight, like a real fight in front of a crowd.
Yeah.
Holy shit. And that was the spark. That was where it all stemmed from. And then, I was like, I actually want to learn this. I want to learn this. I wasn't a martial artist yet. I was a little punk kid still, but because now I'm riding on that cloud 9. I'm like, I'm a bad motherfucker. I'm a bad dude, right? So they ended up making it legal in California about a year later. I fought on the very first sanctioned California event for a show called TFA, the Total Fighting Alliance, which ended up becoming the premier event in California outside of King of the Cage, and especially in the early steps. King of the Cage was kind of like the Northern California stuff. TFA became the Southern. And then it started growing, and then TFA became like the place to be. And I became kind of like the guy. I was like the only one that was really taking it serious, like at least in the general area. And then I was on one show, then I was on another show. And then we started filling out the Santa Monica Civic Center. And I was kind of the guy, and I was doing all these crazy haircuts, and I was like, you know what? I'm a designer. So this is before social media, so I might as well figure out ways of doing my own marketing stuff. And so I started creating my own flyers and passing them around town. And I started like making my own decks. And I was like, I didn't know what I was doing with it, but I was trying to market myself any way that I could so I could make some money and sell out the crowds. And the next thing I knew it, that's what was happening. I fought for the first ever state champion. It wasn't a state champion. It was a show promotional championship in California. And I came out. And I remember it was just wild. But in my mind, this is me. I know I'm going on this long story, but in my mind, I was so afraid of fighting the guy that I was fighting. I was so afraid because I was undefeated at the time. I was 3-0, I think 3-0 or 4-0, and I'm now fighting a guy fighting for a championship title.
Yeah.
So the imposter syndrome came in very, very strong and very real. I'm like, there's no way I can beat a guy that's fighting for a title because he's actually ready for this. I'm just a kid who's been beaten up his whole life. Like, there's no way. So I'm going to act the part. Maybe I can pull it off. I don't think I'm going to. And I manifested that whole thing to play it out. I came out and I cracked him really good. And I was like, oh shit. He fell to the floor off with the first punch I hit him with. And I jumped on top of him and I started punching him way too wild. And I mean, I didn't really know much technique then anyways, even after a couple fights in. He reversed the position, took my back and choked me. And that was the first taste of fighting where I was like, okay, pull your pants up. What are you going to do?
Yep.
Where are we going to go with this?
I think looking at kind of where the sport started to where it's at today, what are your thoughts on the state of MMA today?
I mean, compared to his story and
That's what I
Thor's
was gonna
story,
say.
And I honestly feel
you're in the promotion business.
Listen, yeah, but I just think you have such a good story. I don't know whose story is better, Thor's or yours. You know, Thor got $300 to go fight in a parking lot down in Costa Rica.
Oh, I forgot to tell you, I got paid $150.
Oh, okay, $150.
And it was cash in an envelope.
Yeah, but I honestly, Ryan, tell me what you think. I mean, I actually think Chad's story is a little more compelling. Tijuana, barely training.
I'd agree.
In a bar.
I mean, I was very interested. I love the long, if you tell your stories long, they're very interesting. You could keep going. But no, honestly, it's crazy. But you bring up a point. It's like nowadays, I matchmake for the amateurs, what we call rising stars. And like, dude, just hear Chad's story, hear Thor's story. Like, let's not complain about every matchup. Like, you guys are finding at the Commerce Casino, bright lights for your debut. You got a good coach with you. The game has changed.
But I think the game's changed because of, and I'm not trying to just like kiss up to you, but I think you are.
He's trying to kiss up to you.
Well, I kind of am, bro. Like I am that ultimate.
As soon as
fan.
he's gonna call you his favorite, which he does to everyone.
I'm gonna say you're amazing. I use the same fucking words all the time, but I mean, really, it's the people that built the sport. In my opinion, is why it's where it's at today.
100%.
Right? What do you think of the state of MMA today?
Well, I think
and
that
the evolution.
It's really weird to hear people say that like they consider me like a pioneer of the lower weight classes, right? Because I'm like, I look at the sport and I look at some of these guys that are out there. I'm like, man, like those are the guys that built it. But it's kind of cool to have been on the ground floor of every level of this thing growing to where it is now. I remember when I had a client of mine that was doing clothing. He was a clothing manufacturer for a very, very small clothing company at the time called Tap Out. I don't know if you ever heard of Tap Out.
I remember Tap Out.
Yeah, very small, very small.
Oh, yeah.
So he did all their actual manufacturing. So they weren't using like supplier driven stuff. He actually created all their accessories. So he was the guy that did it all. And oddly, Tap Out was business partners. Their owner was a business partner of the guy who ran the gym that I was at. So they're always at our gym. And so my client said, hey, I want to take you to an event. I was already deeper into my career. I hadn't really done big things because, there's a whole story with that too. But later down the road, my client goes, hey, I want to take you to this event called the WEC. And I want you to see, it was the UFC of the lightweights at the time, because at the time, UFC only had 155 pounds and above. The WEC was for 170 and below. But it was predominantly for the smaller guys. It wasn't really for the 55s and 70 years, even though the Donald Cerrone's came from there. Like that's like those are the guys that actually came from the WEC. And I remember we jumped on a plane, went to the WEC, and I think Uriah, I don't remember if Uriah fought that night or not. Anyways, doesn't matter. And I remember sitting in this arena and I'm like watching it. I'm watching the guys fight. And I turned to my buddy. I say, hey, John, I'm going to fight here one day. And he goes, I know you are. See, I'm like getting emotional about it, just thinking about it, because if he wouldn't have taken me that way, if he would have never taken me, I would have not known that it was possible.
Wow.
And there's something so strong about seeing that you were that close, something tangible that you could touch.
100%.
Right? Because when it's on TV, that's so far away.
Yeah.
You're not even in that realm.
It's like these guys are famous. They're on TV. They're doing this shit.
That's exactly it. Like you don't realize how far away that is. But then again, the flip to the script, it's really so close.
Yeah.
And when I realized that I'm sitting there in this audience, and I mean, I'm really close, and I'm like, I'm literally right here.
Wow.
I'm that close to this. And I told him, I said, I'm going to fight you. And he looked at me and goes, I know. That's why I wanted you to see this. And when I finally got signed to the WEC, I told John what happened. I said, get your ass on a plane. I have a ticket for you. And so he has been at every single one of my big fights ever since then.
What was that called?
It was the WEC.
Yeah, but like, when you picked up the phone, when you heard that, what kind of feelings did you have? Or, what was that like, getting called and signed to the WEC?
It was very fast. It was just like the way it is today. So I didn't have much time to let all my insecurities.
It's like your dreams coming true in a sense, right? Like
kind of, but like I was still bad. Like, look, even I personally feel today that I got signed to the WEC too early. I don't feel like I think I was better than a lot of the guys that were there. But going back to the beginning of our conversation with the mentality, I did not believe that I belonged there. Those guys were something else that I couldn't even grasp what they were. But the idea of like fighting a world champion, like an actual world, not a promotional champion.
Yeah.
An actual killer that is one of the baddest motherfuckers on the planet. That idea to me was just, I couldn't, even though I'm in the WEC. I couldn't wrap my hand around it. So when the call happened, it was one of those things of like, hey, can you make weight in a week? And I was like, yeah, why? WEC's calling. And we had been trying to get in the WEC for a while. And then some of my training partners at the time were all in the UFC, and they had been pushing Sean Shelby to get me signed. It had been one of those things where they were like pushing and pushing, like, you got to sign this kid. He's the top kid outside of the show. Like, you got to get him in. And so finally we got the call. There was a drop off, and I fought one of Clay Guida's top kids, and 5'11", 135er. And I didn't have time to look him up. I didn't have time to do all these things.
Yeah.
And so there I go. I'm on a plane. I go to Vegas. I beat this top kid. And now I'm in the rankings. Like, I've got one win, and now I break the, like, I think I was ranked number 19 or 21 in the world or something like that by that win.
Fucking nuts though, man.
How
And,
cool.
you know, like, so it's fucking cool, right?
Yeah.
But then now the reality kicks in. Wait a minute. Now I'm gonna have to fight guys that are like that. And so I got the phone call. The next fight was a phone call that I was gonna fight Scott Jorgensen, and Scott was the murderer
Beast.
of the WEC. He was the guy that, like, everybody watched for highlights. Like, he was a dude that, like, came out there, and Scott was just pressure. He was gonna drown you. And at the time, I was like, they're fucking feeding me this guy. They're fucking feeding me. Like, this is bullshit. Because I'm like, this is crazy. They want him to win. They want him to highlight me. And that's why they're making this fight. Instead of actually having the ability to see the full picture. Yes, that could have been the scenario. Or they felt that I was good enough to beat this kid. They might have felt that I was the kid that was going to derail his run. But I couldn't see that. I also didn't have the right people around me to see that. The people around me all saw the same image and the vision of what I was thinking originally, where I was like, I can't beat this guy. How the fuck am I going to beat Scott Jorgensen? Have you seen what he's done to people?
Yeah.
You know, I want to talk about that a little bit, right? And I think when it goes to mindset, I think you work with, Taco, right? And I think seeing Taco's last two performances in the UFC, he seems so dialed in. He seems to have an amazing mindset. I
wish I could say that was a lot of my input. I'm sure there's influence in there.
Yeah.
Taco's a very driven individual. You know, he is hungry. He's a guy that came from a lifestyle where he's like, I need to make a different thing happen. And he is been on a path that's stopping at nothing to change that. He's done his own work. He's done his own digging. He's done his own development. And I'm sure that there's a lot of influences in his life that have helped with it. I believe that I'm a big part of that as well. But he's a guy that, like, knows what he needs.
Yep.
And it's going to show. He's like, hey, we are coming after these guys. He's one of those guys that, when I talk about the mindset of a champion, Taco has the mindset of a champion. If you get to the UFC, you don't want to get to that stage like I did at the WEC. When you get to the UFC, you want to be able to be like, hey, if I get the call for the world title shot tomorrow, I'm ready.
Yeah.
That's what it has to be when you get to that platform. You can't get there and go, okay, I need some fights. I need some build. No.
No, yeah.
No. You got to understand that when you get signed to that promotion, realistically, if you do what you're supposed to do, you're 4 fights away possibly, or maybe less, depending on how crazy you do.
Right.
But you could be within 4 or 5 fights of a world title.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, let's talk about Taco, right? Like, he goes out there and gets a finish against this guy. I mean, you got to give him a ranked opponent almost right after that, like, or very close to it.
Yeah, the guy's fighting next to, I don't think he's a ranked opponent, but
he's not. I'm saying if he goes out there and has another performance like he has, he probably should get a ranked opponent or someone in the top 20 right after that.
I think so.
Yeah.
Because he's a guy that, I guarantee you with his record, what it was before, they weren't expecting much of him. The UFC is very good at their matchmaking on what they're looking to build. And then he put on the performance that they're like, whoa, let's see what happens.
He really, I think, shocked everybody and surprised everybody. Those performances were...
What was great about it is everybody's like, oh, well, Taco's just a grappler. He went out there, took this guy down, he's a grappler. Taco's very, very smart with his IQ and his decision.
That's what I was gonna say. When I like, at least as of late, or since that Gulo fight on, he has looked so calculated in every fight.
Mm-hmm.
Everything makes sense. He's seeing things like a step before they happen. You know, he it looks like he's throwing all the right counters. So when people are throwing strikes, he looks so dialed in, and even more than a lot of the guys in the UFC right now. I think that's like his main thing is his IQ and how calculated he's looked.
Yeah, I mean, look, he has the right people for him around him. You know, I work with his grappling. I work a lot with his MMA. He does his striking with Chris Cully, and you know, like he's got a program that works for him, and he knows how it works for him, right? And it's playing out in his career.
That's awesome. So Chad, you, in my opinion, you're kind of Mr. Highlight, right? Hey Chris, can you show the Bellator clip?
I told you he's a fanboy. Now he's calling you Mr. Highlight.
No, the reason I want to talk about it because we recently just got the news that Bellator is going to be no more.
Yeah.
And then I think you had one of the most viral moments in Bellator history, in my opinion.
100%.
George is just tenaciously holding on to a guillotine position, even though George is in side control.
It's funny. This guy's actually a very good friend of mine now.
Left arm. I can't see from
That's
this position
cool.
here if he can pull the right arm out at all.
Now George has his head free.
I fucking love it.
He's
Is there another time you've seen a fighter argue with the ref about if a guy's out? First of all, the sportsmanship, number one. But number two, that's just nuts.
Yeah, like why didn't you just start pounding him? Why are you such a good guy? Like most people would have just started like.
So there's a couple stories that come from this. Number one, I lost my last fight in the WEC the same way, but a little bit different storyline. I did fight a world champion, or he fought for the world title, Antonio Benuelos. I caught him in a Darce choke. He taps. I let go. The referee doesn't see it. The fight continues. I ended up losing by decision. Antonio goes on to fight in the UFC against Miguel Torres for the first ever bantamweight fight in UFC history. My contract got brought to the UFC. So I if you Google it, I'm actually a UFC contracted fighter, but I never fought for the UFC. That was the last event that we had the opportunity to fight in the WEC. The winner of that fight was told they were going to fight in the UFC. So the irony is that I did the same thing here where I let go. But what I did differently in this one was I kept my hand on his throat. If you actually watch the video, I keep my hand on the throat to make sure that I'm still securing the strangle. My knee is across his diaphragm.
Yeah.
That way so I can make sure he's secure. And I heard the breathing patterns change. So that was that part of the story. Now, this, I didn't know it was going to turn into what it did. You know, to me, I didn't.
That thing went viral, bro.
You know, it did millions and millions of views, which is great. And it's kind of like it's like a bittersweet story because the UFC had told us, look, if you go out there and you put on a great performance, we are going to bring you back. Because I never got fired from the UFC, from the WC, whichever one you want to call it at the time. My contract expired and I just didn't get fights because of the transition of the WC and the UFC at the time. That's what happened.
Yeah.
And so I started fighting fights. I went to New Zealand. I did, I fought as much as I could. And then when they said, hey, put on a great performance and we'll bring you back. I was like, awesome. And when that fight happened, I was like this.
I'm back, baby.
I'm back, baby.
Yeah.
And their response was not what we expected. Their response was like, it was a great, admirable, is that the right word? Probably not. Probably a better word for that. But it was a great result. Not what we're looking for. We would have rather you went out there and handled business because that's what's more entertaining.
But you did handle business. The dude.
I thought that was
out.
fucking entertaining. And the views speak for it. It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, I get what the UFC is looking for and stuff too, but I love to see that sportsmanship and that respect from guys that can go out there and try to kill each other for 15 minutes. But when a dude is out, a dude's out.
But it's such a brutal game. Chad was one fight away. The guy tapped. Chad lets him up, but the guy comes back and wins the decision.
Right. So, I mean, it's an interesting storyline. But because
one little thing.
But think about it. If I would have went back to the UFC now,
Yeah.
right, everything after that wouldn't have happened.
They bring it back to when you accepted a fight on 2 months' notice.
Right. So like there's all those little things. So like if you change anything, everything changes.
Yeah, 100%.
And so after this fight, it was funny because I mean we're talking Mike Tyson retweeted it, posting it out there. Like Fedor talked about it. Like everybody was talking about it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is gonna sound funny. Even World Star Did a whole thing on it. Like, I'm serious. It made them now. Hold on.
Is World Star still in existence?
I don't think it's that big, but they still post like
I don't know if it's a thing now, but I mean,
no, but it was huge.
It was huge. Now, of course, it was the funniest thing because it started off like, look at what happened and look at what happened, and then the dialogue changed, and it was like, look what he's wearing. Oh, look at this guy. And then they were like, oh, he's a little saucy. And then it was like, oh, he's the toughest saucy guy in the world. And then it was like, and then it was this whole thing about like that dialogue. And I'm like,
what the fuck is going on?
So I'm just reading hundreds of comments, which you're not supposed to do.
Right.
But I'm laughing my ass off the whole. At this point, I'm like, these guys are arguing with each other. It's not even about me anymore. Like it's just this spiral thing. And then, but after that, I was so sick of the sport. I had already been in it for so long. I had so much going on. I was sick of it. And so I decided I needed a break. So that was when I first retired from the sport of MMA. And I hate it being that cliche thing. They're going to come back. Like every sports athlete, they retire and come back. And I think I knew I was always going to come back, but I needed to be done so I could be clear of the way I felt about it.
Yeah.
And so I could pursue other things. And what I went on to pursue was jiu-jitsu. I wanted to compete at the highest level of jiu-jitsu, and I wanted to learn more about it. And so I spent the next couple of years just being obsessed with jiu-jitsu with the way I was with MMA.
Okay, speaking of jiu-jitsu, Kris, can you bring up the clip from Combat Jiu-Jitsu, please?
You guys got all the good
Can you
stuff.
talk about this real quick?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So when Combat Jiu-Jitsu came around, Eddie Bravo has always been a big believer in the no-gi angle of jiu-jitsu, right? And so he started the 10th Planet System, and he started doing EBI. EBI was pretty much the UFC of no-gi grappling at the time. There was ADCC, it was around, but it was in Brazil. But no-gi, he created his own format. And he was doing these EBI tournaments, Eddie Bravo Invitational. This is where like Gordon Ryan got his name. All these big names came from EBI. And so when I went deep into this jiu-jitsu thing, I started competing a lot. I was competing probably every weekend. I was traveling around the country competing. I needed data. That's what it was all to me. It was data, the obsession. I need more data. And I started getting a little bit of a name in the jiu-jitsu community because I was doing all these big events. And I'd won a big event and another big event. And I got the invite to compete at EBI. And I was like, fuck yeah, that's exactly what I wanted. And I was like, I want to learn this leg lock stuff. And I was like, because I'm beating everybody, I'm learning leg locks. And this one guy named Eddie Cummings was like the king. He was I don't know, I think he was a training partner or a coach of Gordon at the time, but he's from that group. Yep. And but he was the leg lock man. Like he was the guy that nobody had an answer for. I was like, I want to test my shit against that guy. Because now I've finally hit this new angle of I want to test my information. Was I afraid? Absolutely. But I finally broke that barrier of like running from the fears. So this will tie into the combat jiu-jitsu. Well, when I went and did that, I won my first match. I was like, great, I beat a high-level black belt. And now I got Eddie Cummings' second round. I was like, here's my shot. I'm about to shock the world. 20-something seconds later, I was screaming. And I was like, wow, I got to learn this shit. And so I spent more time, and then I started doing more data collection. So my coach, Sean Choi, we started getting back on the mats, and we just studied. We studied the Danaher stuff. We studied the 10th Planet stuff, all the leg locks. And I started competing only going for leg locks. I didn't care about my wrestling anymore. I just wanted the data.
It's funny you say that because we interviewed Anthony Romero, who's going to fight one of your fighters in March. And that's what he talked about, MMA. These guys have some really cool leg locks and all sorts of nifty shit.
Hey, well, and that's just part of it, right? So, yeah. I mean, good. I'm glad I'm saying that.
No.
I'm saying, but because it's good because people see it, right?
Yeah.
And so then I got back into the circuit, and I ended up competing, and I went against a guy that was really high level, and I tested my legs, and I was like, it's working. Like he couldn't submit me, and he was a big partner of that same group. I did a super fight in New Jersey. And we headlined it, and I ended up losing in overtime, but I didn't care. I was like, I went 10 minutes with one of the best leg lockers in the world in this super fight. But that was my focus. That was the win. So I was like, now I'm ready to do other things. Then Eddie started Combat Jiu-Jitsu, and he's like, hey, we're doing a small tournament. I think it was 4 guys at this time. They invited me to be one of the first 4 to ever do Combat Jiu-Jitsu. It was on UFC Fight Pass. Would you want in? I was like, yeah, that'd be awesome. I'd love to do that. Like integrate MMA with the stuff that I'm doing now. So that was that. And the week of the event, so here's the side story. There's too many side stories. Fuck, sorry. I had never made, so it was 135 pounds, same day weigh-ins. I had never made 135 pounds same day because I was always walking around about 160 pounds.
Yeah.
So I had to go on this extreme diet. So I was super skinny, super small, running, miles every day just to get the weight down. The week of the tournament, I was training with Victor Henry, and Josh Barnett was my head coach for this one, and actually for the last part of my career. And Victor defended a choke that I put him in. It popped my rib out. So this was like on a Monday or Tuesday, or I think it was a Monday. My rib gets popped out. I've never had that experience before. Combat jiu-jitsu is that weekend. And I'm like, this is not good. But for the first time in my life, no part of me ever felt like pulling out. I wasn't going to use that as an excuse, even though every part of me was like, this is your chance. You can pull out now, and there's no opportunity for you to get beat and say you got beat by a jiu-jitsu guy. Like, you have the opportunity, and that's what got me up every day, figuring out how to actually overcome this. I was like, look, my biggest win is going to be, can I make 135? I don't know if I can. If I can't train, I can't run, don't know if I can. So we go, and whatever, days go on, little by little, I'm doing therapy every day, and it's getting better. I finally make the weight, 135. Boom. I was like, holy shit, I can't believe I did that. First milestone, done. Then we go to the event. I go up against one of Eddie's top guys in the first match. Oh man, it was wild. That thing was wild. Nobody knew what to expect, right? Because remember, this hadn't happened before.
Yeah, it's the first time ever.
Nobody knew what to expect. Everybody was quiet. Because jiu-jitsu events, everybody's quiet. It's like a Japanese MMA event. And it's a 10th planet guy, Jam Holland, sits to the ground. And in combat jiu-jitsu, as soon as one person's grounded, strikes are active. And of course, he sits to the ground. In my mind, I'm like, oh, you dumb motherfucker. And so I swing in this big wind up, and I swing and a miss. But the thing was, the whole crowd went, because they forgot.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody, because it was in the middle of one of the EBIs. Yeah. So what it was is you got, I think Gordon was on the card, and like you got all these just matches. And when they saw, like, oh shit, this is about to get nuts. And for the next 10 minutes, Jam and I just beat the shit out of each other, trying to submit each other. Well, he puts me in the thing, I think it was called a dead orchard. It's like a triangle where your arms get stuck in. And I go to pull out, my rib fully pops out. Fully pops out. It was one of those ones where like, it felt like I got punched in the stomach. Like it was bad.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what it was going to feel like going into the matches because I hadn't done anything. Even backstage, I couldn't do anything. I was too afraid of that happening. And so I ended up catching him. I started hitting him, and Josh was like, he's fading. Just keep hitting him. I'm like, if I listen to my ribs, I'm done.
Listen to Josh.
So
not your ribs.
So not the ribs, Josh. I don't want to piss Josh off.
For sure.
Right?
I wouldn't want to piss Josh off.
I just started wailing. I started going and going and going. And then he covered up, and I caught a Darcy, tapped, and I won the match.
Nice.
And then I go backstage, and I start just uncontrollably vomiting. The pain that I'm in was so bad, it caused a cycle of vomiting, where the more pain I was in, the more I threw up. The more I threw up, the more pain I was in. And so I still had one more fight that night.
Oh.
Yeah, it was a tournament. So then I had to go against Nick Honstein, UFC veteran Nick Honstein, in the finals. And the commission's coming up, and so my chiropractor's back there, my physical therapist, Josh, they're all hiding me from the commission because they don't want the commission to see me. And I'm like, I'm in such bad. And they're like, what's wrong with him? They're like, oh, he's just dehydrated. He's dehydrated. He's going to be fine. They're like, you sure that's what it is? They're like, yeah, I think.
OG Josh knows what to say.
And so they're like, okay, cool. And I remember I started relaxing. They got my rib to go back in. I was still fucked up. And I watched Nick finish his last match. And he's on the floor hyperventilating. Because remember, this is some wild shit. Like,
no, for sure.
Like 10 minutes that like nobody's like, this is crazy. And he's down the floor, just like hyperventilating. And I'm like, when are we going up? They're like, well, there's a couple, like 3 more matches, whatever the number was, and then you guys are up. And I'm like, wow, I'm fucked up, but he's dead. Like, I'm really messed up, but I can beat a dead guy. As long as this doesn't take forever, I can beat that.
Yeah.
And so I started getting excited. I was like, all of a sudden, the pain went away. And I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Power of the mind, bro.
And 10 minutes went by, 20 minutes went by, 40 minutes went by, like an hour went by. And I'm like, and I'm watching him now. Start pacing him. I'm like, this sucks.
He's back to normal.
He's got his second wind.
You know what though? And then I went in the finals when they finally called us. I said, you know what? I'm going to go out there and I'm going to do everything I can to give this man hell. But I knew what I was doing. I was taking my shield off and I was going to go get a warrior's death. I knew that's what I was walking into. There was absolutely no way that I was going to beat this guy. He deserved to beat me that night. Not meaning in the way of like he deserved it that night. I was a damaged goods. I was still going to go out there. And if he fucked up, I was going to catch him.
Right.
But we got out there and I knew I was taking my, like, it was one of those things. I see all the battlefield. There's 150 warriors out there and my whole squad's gone.
Have you watched Game of Thrones before?
Yeah.
The Battle of the Bastards when Jon Snow's like just running after all the
So that's kind of it, right? Like
coming at him, he's just ready. He's like, I'm gonna go out.
Look,
but
and that's
Chad, are you
exactly.
senior Jon Snow?
No, I'm Chad George.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
And
Jon Snow has nothing on Chad George.
I know.
That's all I'm gonna say.
but no, I knew it was going to be a glorious death, but that moment changed me because I walked into a scenario knowing that I was going to die that night, but I was going to go down fighting.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to be like, I'm going to use this as the excuse for my rib. I never even talked about it to people because I was like, it didn't matter. Like I lost. That's all it was. And I got caught in a twister. And Eddie Bravo's own like signature move in the first ever combat jiu-jitsu thing put on by him, I get caught by a twister, which,
Yep.
what the fuck? And I remember being in that moment. I was like, I could tap or I could somehow get out of this. But what's going to happen after that? Like I'm good. So I tap and he becomes the first winner ever of combat jiu-jitsu. Then fast forward 6 months later, he does the first ever world championships. He recruits 8 black belts now. And we've got guys like Wilson Hayes, Barrett Ishida, me, Nick Honstein's back, J.M. Holland's back. We've got a couple other guys. And I'm like, I'm in. Like, I want to be on that show. I want to prove that this was because of a rib, that I belong on that stage. And I think all the media leading up, that's what I talked about. I talked about like, watch, like these guys do not know what I've been through to be on the stage. And I'm going to walk out of that tournament as the first world champion. And I wanted to face Barrett Ishida. I wanted the toughest guy in the bracket. I wanted Barrett. And Barrett is a legend. Barrett is an MMA legend, jiu-jitsu legend. And we ended up getting matched first round.
Ooh, we got what you wanted.
I got what I wanted. And then I'm like, okay, this is what you wanted, Chad. Like, let's do it. And then there was a miss weight. Wilson Hayes missed weight by like 12 pounds.
12 pounds.
It was something ridiculous. So then it moved the whole brackets around. I ended up getting some new guy that came in last minute. I was going to get Barrett second round. And this wrestler kid from the Midwest was going against Barrett. And I was like, oh, Barrett's going to run through this guy. I ended up submitting my kid real quick. This kid beat Barrett in overtime. And I was like, oh, shit. So I'm going to beat the kid. I'm going to fight the kid that beat Barrett. Like, I'm like, this is going to be wild. And while on the other side of the bracket, this kid, Sidemar Honorio, I'm probably butchering his name, went against not J.M. Holland, Nick Honstein, the guy that beat me in the finals at the previous. He beat the shit out of Nick. Like, it was just a
brutal
beat. It was a beating. And so then I end up beating the kid in the semifinals. Oh, what's his name? Forget his name. And good kid too. Like I see him around. I'm blanking. Anyway, so I beat him in overtime. It was a great match. And then it was me and Sidmar in the finals. Two of the guys that, in my opinion, I think everybody else that watched it, the most brutal finishes and the brutal matches. It was us two. Like, if you watched the way we competed throughout the day, you were like, yeah, it's gonna be those two. Nice. And there was even one point. I remember when I submitted the semifinals, I got up and I did like a turtle walk. I just pointed at the crowd. I was like, I told you. I told you. And the clip that you're going to show was when me and Sidmar fought. So if you want to show it.
Yeah, Chris, let's see that clip.
Weight finals coming up a little bit later. Our rematch, Nathan Orchard versus
The slap heard across the world, bro.
I like how you don't have to worry about the uptick.
Sure. It's crazy because they're gonna just bitch somebody's whole thing. Like,
So, and here's the thing about it, we call it a bitch slap, right? But it's really not. Like,
no,
it's a palm strike.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Like what you'll see. Watch when he gets up. Oh, I didn't know if keeps going, but when he gets up, I was very close to knocking him out.
Yeah.
Very
If you
close.
get it perfect on the palm.
No, I did. It
Yeah.
was all palm.
Yeah.
The way I throw my strike, there is no slapping involved.
Right.
It is 100% Bosch root and pancreation style.
Yeah.
I mean, look who I was training with, Josh Barnett, right? Like everything I did was to hurt somebody. And when I did that big strike, it was like everybody was like, "Holy shit. This stuff is violent. It's not just slapping. This is a real fight." And like jiu-jitsu, I can't call jiu-jitsu a fight. I love jiu-jitsu. It's really molded me into who I am, but I can't call it a fight. Not since I've been in the cage. I can't do it. I can call it a match, but if you're gonna call jiu-jitsu a fight, I got to call wrestling a fight.
Yeah.
And then if you're calling wrestling a fight, it means I've been in hundreds and hundreds of fights. But combat jiu-jitsu, it is a fight.
Right.
We are trying to hurt each other with blows that lead to the submissions.
Yeah, it's come a long way.
It really
it's growing
has. It
in
really
popularity. I mean, there's a lot going on in the combat sports world.
Yeah, and I love it. And it's, I'm at that match, we ended up going to overtime, and there was a lot of amazing moments that happened in the match. And I remember when it came down to it, I submitted him real fast in overtime. It was like one of those ones where it was like, boom, and when it was over, in my mind, I celebrated. Well, yeah, and I forgot he still had a return attack on me, because the way the overtime works is that you both get a chance in these positions. And I had a little bit of an adrenaline dump because I thought, like, for a second, I disconnected from the clear path that I had the entire, like, every time I won, it was like the job's not done.
Right.
Yeah.
My hand got raised, job's not done. Like, I wasn't celebrating anything, job's not done. And that was the moment that I did. And so I disconnected from what needed to happen. And I was like, okay, Chad, get back to it. All you have to do is hold on longer than it took you to submit him. It's time based. And he started in the spider web, which is the arm lock position. Probably my worst position too. But I was like, okay, there's no way he's gonna be able to arm lock me as fast as I choked him.
Do you know how long the time was?
I don't remember. It must have been like 30 seconds.
Oh shit! Yeah, so 30 seconds. You're probably like, okay, I can.
Yeah, but like, remember, like, I'm dealing with every, like,
Right.
even in that moment,
yeah.
I'm still dealing with all those. Do I deserve this? Like I've just gone through all this shit, and yet the old me is still pulling on me, going like, hey dude, remember, you suck at life, dude.
Because that mental battle is really tougher than all the physical battles we go through, right?
And so
they're
I'm dealing
happening
with
at the
all
same
of it.
time. Yeah.
And then I remember locking on, and it felt like an eternity, and I felt everything slipping, and then I heard the timer go off, and I was like, holy shit. That was it.
Champ.
I just fucking did it.
I did it. I was became the first ever combat jiu-jitsu world champion. And, it's cool because there will be many other guys that I know are going to do it better than me, but I was the first.
But
There'll only be one first.
But isn't that how it goes down? Like the
Everything
sports
evolves in a
evolve, the
sense.
skill sets
Absolutely.
evolve, right?
Yep.
And I think that, and I think this kind of feeds into kind of what I want to ask you about next, or talk to you about next, is, always wanting to do better for, the community, right? And I think when we talked about, starting Up Next 2.5 years ago, you were one of the first people that we went to, right? Really getting your opinion on what's right with promotions and sort of what's wrong. And I don't know if people really realize how much input you've had and how we've structured and built Up Next Fighting.
Yeah, I think, my story of where I'm at and where my career went is just, it was never supposed to be that way. I was the kid that was supposed to have just always came up short. And it just didn't play out that way because I chose in the end for it not to play out that way. And when you and I started talking about you wanting to do Up Next, I was wanting to get involved in promotional stuff. I was thinking about it because I realized that my story is identical to everybody else. Everybody. It doesn't matter if you're fighting for the cage or whatever it is. Everybody has that struggle, and they've had that reason to quit. And whether you quit or you kept going, my story is just a version of everybody else's. And if I can use pieces of mine to help people see that they don't have to go the other direction, they can keep moving forward, then I've realized that that's why I had to go through all my shit. I had to go through all that so I could give people an example. Not that I'm the example, but the story is the example. that they can do it too. And so when we started talking about you wanting to do Up Next, and you were telling me about your vision about wanting to give these people a better platform and wanting to do something different for these guys and wanting to give the athletes what they deserved, that resonated with everything that I've ever wanted from the combat sports world and from recognition as an athlete or even as just an individual. And it aligned almost identically. And that's what I told you back then.
Yeah.
And I still stand on that today, because that's what I think we've been able to do collectively, with the little bit of influence that I think that I've had in Up Next.
Yeah, I wouldn't say you've had a little influence. I've actually said, at least on me, you've had a lot of influence, to be honest with you, because you always shoot me straight, like what's working, sort of what's not, right? And I think that without your input and view into, everything that we're doing, I don't think Up Next would, be where we're at today, especially on the fighter relations side, giving these guys a platform that they deserve and making them feel like they are valued and important. And I think one thing that you made it clear is, like, a lot of these other promotions make these guys feel like they're a number, that they're not valued. And I think that's what we've strived to make sure we're not doing.
Yeah, Chad, you've had a lot of influence, especially with the fighter relations side and just what we've tried to do. I mean, we came into the business knowing that was our goal and what we wanted to do. And then, after you guys talking and kind of hearing your feedback, it was just perfect. It was all online and
yeah, but
brand.
the one bummer is working with you. Like, I think at the beginning of Up Next, we were doing, these cool fighter parades, and we'd have some entertainment aspects of the shows, which I love and I really want to get back to, because I think it really sets the tone for the event. But there's been an overwhelming amount of fighters wanting to be on these cards. You know what I mean? So we've had to really stack these cards. I mean, our last card was like 20 fights.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, for me, I know one of the hardest parts about having a guy like me involved with Up Next is because the competition side of it. There's a lot of other coaches that are out there, and I get it, but I want everybody to understand that the reason why I'm involved is not because of anything that most people think it is. I got involved because I want to see every athlete succeed, whether it's mine or other schools or other camps. I want to give their athletes the exposure and the respect that they deserve. And here's one thing a lot of people don't know. Obviously you guys do, but I think the biggest thing that I contribute outside of the little conversations that we have is that I want to give every athlete, whether you're on an Up Next card once or you are using it as a platform to go to the next stage, I want you to give you something that'll be memorable for the rest of your life. I want to give you something that you could walk away from that and go, I was there that night. And I think that's one of the things we've been able to accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, not to get too far into the weeds, but I don't think a lot of people know that you do all of our artwork. You do all the fighter,
and that's the best fucking artwork in the game. I think even better than
Listen, I really say, look, I think UFC does a great job. I think some of the other folks do, but I really think the quality of our creative side of things is second to really none. And I remember you telling me at the beginning of this, you want to give these fighters something that they could share with their families and be proud of, not just some Photoshop, some grainy picture of a fighter on some bullshit artwork.
Well, I think that's where it all started for me. When I was coming up, the promoters would make these posters where it looked like my face was just cut out and stuck on it, right?
Yeah.
And I was
people
like,
are still doing that now, though.
I know they are.
Yeah.
I know. And for me, being an artist, I had worked for companies like Nike. I had worked for companies like National Academy of Sports Medicine. So I was designing at a very high level, and there was no way I was going to let my face be on something like that. So I started doing my own artwork.
Yeah.
I started by doing my own flyers. I started doing all these own things. So that way I realized that's what got people to come see me. That it was the promotional material that I was pushing out. And so when we started talking, I was like, these guys need something that they can walk away. Because let's be honest, those cut out photos of your face when you're 60 years old and you're telling your grandkids about that one time. I'm talking about the guy that does it once.
Yeah.
That one time you fought, that's a core memory that you got to have for the rest of your life. Look at this fucking poster. I think that's me on here. Let me peel this off. And no, that's not me.
Yeah.
And that's not what you want. You know what I mean? Like, this is about experiences. Life is about experiences. And if these people are going to stand on your stage and fight for you and fight for your crowd, the least a promotion can do is give them something that they can be proud of.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in that. And I like, you and you holding us accountable, right? And me always, throwing things past you to make sure that we're headed on the right path. And I do that with some other coaches also, right? And I think anybody that could question your involvement with Up Next, it just really doesn't see the big picture and really how they have benefited from the work that you've sort of put in and showed us what best practices can look like from a fighter and a gym's perspective.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and my biggest thing is I want all the coaches.
Oh no, trust me, I've caught a little shit from people.
Oh, I'm
like,
sure.
oh, we favor Chad's guys or whatever. Which Ryan, as the matchmaker, I think can clearly see that that's not the
No, not one bit. To be
not
honest,
the case. No.
And look, I know there's always going to be criticism
Yep.
with anything you do. You can't please everybody. That's the way it's always going to be.
Yep.
But for me, I'm not going to get involved in something, and this is where I think where I've learned to be confident with is that I'm not going to get involved in something unless I believe in the vision of it.
Well, one thing I love about your willingness to get involved, because I've worked with or tried to work with some other coaches too. Like, hey, let's talk about what we could be doing. Creating additional synergy between us. And they don't step up and put that extra time and effort in it, and that's okay if they don't. But don't complain when you've been invited to have a seat at the table if you don't take it,
Yeah, the thing is like I'm not trying to compete with anybody.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's the thing people forget is, yes, I get it. We're a competitive gym, but at the end of the day, I'm doing what I'm doing. I have zero desire about the person that's here or here. I'm not competing with you. I believe in what I'm doing. I'm at a stage in my life where all that insecurity shit, I do my best every day to not listen to it. And so when I start competing with other people and I start looking what they're doing, all that's going to do is feed the old shit.
Yep.
I'm worrying about today and what I can do to better today so tomorrow can be better than today. I don't know if tomorrow is going to be better today. That's going to wait till tomorrow. So I'm also not going to be worried about people thinking that I'm trying to have some conspiracy against that. You know what I mean? Like it's not the case.
No.
That's their own insecurities.
right?
Yeah, no, it truly is, man. And, talking about, success and kind of what we got going on, we got something big brewing for March 8th, Ryan.
Oh, we do. My cat's out of the bag.
Yeah, and let's talk about it.
Well, March 8th, there's going to be 2 or 3 pro titles on the line. 2 of your guys will be fighting for pro titles.
Yeah.
Chase Gibson's going to be fighting Albert Morales. Johnny Robles is fighting Anthony Romero. I know we're ecstatic about that.
Listen, I'm ecstatic because Robles just had that amazing finish at Cage Warriors, right? And I think he really has gone on a really strong run.
Yeah, I think both those fights are going to be wild. I don't think there's anybody else in the city, maybe even the state, Western states, that are more deserving of that spotlight than those 4 athletes. And I think it's really cool because it's going to be a showdown between CMMA and Black House.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, the state's a big state and we're like 3 blocks from each other.
Yeah.
Isn't
It's
that
cool.
funny?
I have a great relationship with those guys and it's just, it's competition, but it's cool that the best guys are going to be the guys fighting for that title. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, talk about Johnny Robles a little bit, right? I mean, he's been on really a tear fighting, let's say, he's fighting Anthony the Bully Romero, who's also just been on a tear too.
Mm-hmm.
But if Robles can pull a win off against Romero, what do you think's on the horizon for Johnny?
Whoever wins that fight should get the call to the Contender Series or UFC. And that's what I think. But
yeah,
I'll let
I
Chad.
think the same thing. Man.
Chad
I've
say
been
his 2
preaching the
cents.
whole thing about, the Bully being on the road to the UFC.
Yeah, I think they're both. I think they're both right there. I think this is a fight that they both need.
Yeah,
Same thing for Albert and Chase. Look at Albert and Chase, right? They've both been in the game for a long time. Albert was in the UFC. Chase was on Contender Series. Both of them have been scratching their way to get back up. Their ages aren't helping them. So this is like a crucial moment in their career to figure out what happens next. So I think between Robles and Romero, they're both young. So whoever loses that fight, I think still has a very strong run coming after that. They're going to use that as data and experience. Obviously, I'm biased, right? Because I want Johnny to make that step. He's an incredible athlete. And then with Chase and Albert, I think that the winner of that fight should be deserving of another crack.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so too. I'm just so excited about the Robles versus freaking Romero fight.
Yeah, that has fireworks written all over it. But I think it really, again, boils down to who executes their game plan more effectively.
And that's every fight, right? You
Very true.
go into any fight, and if you don't execute what you're supposed to do, that's where the shit goes wrong. You know, you might even go in against a much lesser opponent. We see that all the time too, and you fight to their
100%.
level. You know, you might be the favorite, and you just don't show up because you didn't respect the guy or whatever it is, right? So you won't know until that cage door shuts to see how you're going to perform.
Yeah, the most talented guy skill wise doesn't always win, right? There's so many things that go into
There's
it.
so many guys that are the most talented in the room, and then that the lights are on, the pressure's on, and they just can't perform.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, a lot of athletes who've been sitting down with people say that same thing. Guys can look amazing in the gym, but once it comes time to event time, they just crumble. They can't handle it. Well, you also have some other big stuff coming up. You guys are going to be in London.
Yeah, yep. We're going to London in March. I've got Javier Garcia going to fight for the Cage Warriors world title against their number one guy in the UK on Friday, I think the 21st. And then Taco will be in UFC London the next day. So it's pretty crazy that booked at the same time.
UNF alumni, baby. Let's
There you
go.
go, right?
That
Let's
is pretty
go.
cool. You know, Javi's our former champ. We were trying to make, Javi Potentials versus Albert too, or Albert versus Chase. But I think Javi got booked at Cage Wars, which I think is a big opportunity for him.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the guy he's fighting is he's their current, star, like what they're building with Conor McGregor. You know, he's I think he won the title, and then I think he defended it once, and then I don't know if this is second defense or first defense, I'm not sure, but he's a stud, man. He's on a long win streak, big, long, lanky guy, difficult style to fight. He's the guy that they're pumping, and it's just like what we're talking about. These guys, I know the winner of this fight moves forward.
Isn't that pretty critical? Like everything's hinging on this fight for Javi. Right?
But let's be honest, doesn't everything hinge on every fight?
100%. But I did want to, so I'm assuming I know the answer to this now, but this is a bigger fight on paper, right?
Yes.
One fight. Does the atmosphere in the room change at all? Is a fight camp any different? Does anything extra go into it when there's a fight with more on the line, so to say?
So I think one of the biggest things we talk about in the room, it doesn't matter what the fight is. It's the biggest fight of your life, right? And do I think this is the biggest fight of Javi's life? Actually, yes, it is. But every fight is, so that's the way we approach it.
Right.
I'll say this, that Javi right now we're 10 weeks out, and he's already making this the most important camp of his life. He's basically living in the gym already. He's doing all the things that he needs to do as an obsessed athlete to go out there and beat a guy that they do not want you to beat. Because let's be honest, they're not flying us to London so he can beat their champion. They don't want that.
Yeah,
They want us to come out there so they can highlight their guy so he moves on. And Javi is already hyper focused on what he needs to do. And so what's great is in 10 weeks, we're going to take the best version of Javier Garcia. We're going to fly across the world, and we're going to go beat their national champion.
I can't wait. Give me goosebumps a little bit.
I know, man. That
Wait,
kind
you
of
just
gave
said
me
that.
chills, bro. Like just saying that.
Well, that's going to be amazing for Javi too, because right, he's going to fight the hometown guy. He
Yep.
goes and gets the job done. Now he has even more haters, right? These people that don't like him, but anyways, they want to tune in and watch him. And that's just even more added stuff for him.
And
to get
Javi's
back
just
on.
an entertaining guy anyway.
He is.
Like, outside the cage, right? I always talk about being a brand in the cage and outside the cage. And El Mariachi's definitely an interesting dude.
No, he's got his own character, and that's part of what makes him exciting is that he is a character. And the biggest thing we've been talking about is don't let the character overshadow the fighter, because that's what's going to get you forward. That was what I did earlier in my career. I let the character, the savage, the character run me until I realized that character was always in me. I didn't have to hide behind the character. And that's the biggest thing I think we're working on is like the mariachi's always there. Be the mariachi, but let the mariachi do his thing in the cage.
How'd you get the nickname Savage? Is there any cool, funny story behind that?
It's not really funny. I mean, it's like I was in the studio. It's not one of those great stories.
Okay.
I guess you might say it. You might say it's a story, but I was in the studio and I'd already been training. I think I'd done 1 or 2 fights, and I shadow boxed everywhere. Like I was the guy in the store shadow boxing, doing everything shadow boxing, and I've hitting everybody in the studio, hitting everybody. And one day, one of the artists was like, "Hey, Chad, stop being such a savage all the time. Like, just let people work."
Did a bell ring in your head like right when he said Savage? Like,
No, it didn't really stick.
I thought, like, that's my new nickname.
It didn't really stick. And then the next event, he started like calling me Savage. And then everybody in the studio started calling me Savage. And then the way I fought, people were like, "Man, this kid fights like a savage." And I was like, I guess I'll run with that. And then my career just kind of, everything I did was kind of very Savage-esque. Like it was like I started building, the name just worked.
Yeah.
And so the image that I started building, the character was like a savage superhero. So I wanted the bravado to be a savage. I needed my hair to be a savage. I needed the way I talk to people to be a savage. And then next thing I knew it, I had like arenas and like auditoriums chanting it, and it was fucking crazy. And I'm like, all right, I guess that's what we're doing.
I love it. So you've got fighters in the UFC. You've got fighters fighting at the highest levels on the regional scene. But in my opinion, you probably have the strongest stable of amateurs now going to be turning pros, right?
I think so.
Yeah, no, I mean, you've got David Rojas, Desmond Alvarado, who I just think is one of the top guys who just competed and won gold for the amateurs globally, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I say Pan Americans.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about your
Yeah.
upcoming stable of this next generation?
Yeah, it's funny. Like the group that we have right now, I don't know if it's funny, but the group that we have right now, man, they're so talented.
Yeah.
They're so talented. We've got David Rojas who's going pro. We've got Rosario Romero going pro. We've got the Lavelle brothers, Chase and Stone Lavelle, that are going to be going pro, I hope, by the end of this year. We've got, did I say Desmond already?
Not yet.
So I got Desmond Alvarado, who went through and he just wrecked everybody at the IMAF Pan Americans. And actually, he had tough fights for that also.
No, yeah, no,
Dude,
I watched one of them.
Problem.
Yeah, no, I think we're talking about mindset. It looks like when you're watching him, there's no quitting him.
Yeah, that was one of those crazy nights too, because that tournament was a wild tournament. The IMAF tournament's crazy. Multiple fights in multiple days against international champions. And I wasn't able to be there in the finals for those guys. I had to leave to fly to Taco for his last UFC fight. So I had to leave these guys in Mexico with like a team and coaches that they weren't familiar with, and they still performed. So it was amazing. And then we also have Israel Lua.
Yeah.
Going pro. We have Drake Flores going pro. So like it's kind of sad because all my amateurs are no longer like juniors anymore.
I'm not very happy
like,
about that, to
what?
be honest.
What?
I'm so happy for the guys going pro, but I don't get to match make them so much anymore.
Look, the problem is there's not enough shows to get them booked.
Yeah.
No, that's
So maybe
true.
you will a couple more times, I don't know. But like, because I got to get these guys busy, and it's tough when I've got this 2 handfuls of amateurs that are ready to go pro, but
Yeah.
I don't have the show power to put them on. Like I can't call you guys and be like, hey, I need all my guys
Yep.
booked on every slide. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But those groups of guys are awesome.
Well, we're working on some stuff, if the stars align, where we'll be a little more active. I think we're pretty active based on being a regional show, but we're also working on some stuff where we can be even a little more active. We're hoping to work some things out in the next few months here because, there's a great demand, which we're very proud of and happy for, of fighters that want to fight with us. So we definitely want to try to keep your guys fighting with us as much as possible.
Cool.
Not a big fan of them fighting elsewhere, but I get it.
Me either. And it's funny because talking about our relationship together. When I hear that, I've caught in glimpses, but I'm like, man, now I'm like, sounds like there's a lot more artwork that we need.
Bro, like that artwork is just such fire. I can't commend you enough. I
Thank
mean,
you.
because I feel like, and what a lot of people don't know, you actually designed our logo too for Up Next Fighting.
And Fight Family.
Yeah, and Fight Family. That's right.
I remember
shout
you and
out
them
to you.
when
I
we
forgot
started.
about that.
I came up with the name and we submitted the draft, and I sent him like this stick figure, like action people going at it. He's just like turned it down right away. He's like, I got something for you. Don't
No,
worry.
that wasn't what it was.
Yes, you did. You pretty much. This is not gonna look good on T-shirts. I don't know. And he's like, let me come up with something. And then
Yeah,
he came
Chad's
up
not the easiest guy, but he's not the easiest guy for the right reason.
I like that's easy for me. Tell me when it's right. Tell me when it's wrong. And tell me when you say it's wrong. Tell me why. Which Chad.
Well, he's not a yes man, right?
No, 100%. And yeah, I'm not surrounded
I
by
actually
comedians.
forgot. Like, I should have given you kudos that you designed our logo for Fight Family.
No, it's all good. Like there's the thing, I don't do it for that. You know what I mean? Like for me, I don't care about that stuff because it's like the old me would be like, they didn't give me fucking credit.
Yeah.
But what does that do? That means I need other people to validate it. I don't care about that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
But it's nice. Don't get me wrong. That stuff's nice. We appreciate it. I think we put too much weight on other people acknowledging it. Where it's like, no, like, look, I'm every time I'm looking at you right now, I see it. I'm like, it's rad. I like it.
You feel good about it, right?
Yes.
Like you do. That's all that matters,
So cool,
right?
great. And that same thing when we talk about like the athletes and like I feel good about helping these guys.
Yeah.
Do I end up getting bit in the ass at many times? Yes, I do. But I feel good for
But what
the reasoning of doing
yeah,
it.
but I mean, I think that's the right mindset to have. I think when you're doing the right thing, you're doing right by people. You do get bit in the ass, but at the end of the day, you can be proud of who and what you are. You know what I
That's
mean?
it.
And that for me, if I could look myself in the mirror, I'm very flawed, but I'm very proud of who I am and the journey that I'm on.
It's very flawed.
No, dude, listen, you suffer demons and all this stuff. We're
We all
talking about
do.
you, but bro, if you had any clue what went on in my head, I can rival you a little
Look,
bit.
here's the thing, but that's what's we're great about it, right? It doesn't even need to be a rival you, a rival this.
Yeah.
We talked about like, the comparison of my story and Thor's story. Here's the great thing about it.
They're both great
all-
stories.
Yeah, but here's the thing. We all have our story.
Yep.
We have our things that we're fighting in our head. And it's no bigger than the person sitting next to you because that person's dealing with their own story. So it's like, who's the judge? Which one's better? Which one's better? Like, who are you to have that opinion?
Yep.
Because you're not the one walking in those shoes. Right. And so I think that's where the collectiveness comes in, where like, hey, we are working together to beat those situations. I don't care
Yep.
if you feel yours is worse than mine or mine's better than the next. None of that fucking matters.
Yep.
What matters is we're working together to fix the forward progression.
Yeah. So you expanded your gym recently. So can you kind of tell us what's going on down at CMMA?
Yeah, so we expanded our gym. This is crazy. We are entering our 11th year as an academy. 11 years.
Yeah.
We expand to an 8,000 square foot facility. We've got classes from morning to night that run throughout the day. We have a full staff, and we're gonna celebrate our 11th year this year. Pretty crazy.
I love it. Yeah. So, I mean, people probably have especially folks that follow us and do all this, the misperception that your gym could just only be for fighters, but you run a bunch of kids classes and
Yeah, our fight program is just a piece of what we do.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say the fight program is the one that costs us the most money.
sure.
I am barely paying bills because of those guys. I like it, but that's where the passion's at, right?
Yeah.
So I know we have kids classes, we have boxing classes, we have Muay Thai classes, kickboxing classes. We do personal training, we do consulting. There's tons of stuff that we do. And in fact, I even started recently doing more outreach in my artwork for other friends' gyms and other things because I want to be able to help people in that same regard. And that's pretty much what I think the best thing about our gym is that we're using the martial arts to help empower people and help them with their story.
yeah, no, I love that. What else you got for Chad?
I think
Bucket of money?
Yeah,
No,
come
I
on.
barely got any myself.
I have a quick question. How's Ryan to deal with as a matchmaker, bro? Does he have his shit together? Or is he a
Honestly,
challenge?
listen, I'm gonna be
Be
I'm
honest.
gonna be honest. He's growing into an amazing role. In the beginning, it was definitely, I could tell in the beginning he was trying to be the friend relationship with people. I'm serious because he didn't know how to approach it otherwise. And that's not me saying it as a negative. What it was, you're like, well, let me.
We've honestly, me and him had this conversation kind of recently too.
So
which is
great.
hilarious
So-
you're bringing it up. Yeah.
So what I've been, it's been cool to see is like, it went from, okay, I'm approaching this from like one of me, hey guys, I want to make the best matches. Like, what do you got? Let's be a friend. But then you could feel the confidence come out with
Yeah.
the work that you're doing, with the matches that you're making and seeing what's happening, and you're putting yourself out there. You're doing the work, you're doing the research, and now every conversation, it seems like a more confident version of the last person that I talked to with it. And that's what the fight game is supposed to be, right? You can't be just a friend in a fight game because it's the fight game. It's the most relentless sport in the world. You need to have that same ability in the way you match a week and the way you deal with athletes and coaches. And it's been real. I'm just being honest. Like, it's been cool to watch you develop that confidence and bravado in the way you do it over the time. So to answer it, it's always been good. It's been cool. I've always, right. He's always approached it, but he wasn't afraid to ask questions. And I think that's what's allowed him to get to the stage where he is at right now.
Appreciate that. No, I definitely feel more confident now. This is a tough business to go into, right? Especially with no pedigree or anything.
I wouldn't do it. I'm not going to do it.
Within the MMA world.
He and George have the worst jobs at Up
Fucking
Next
terrible.
match.
No, but at least George, right, had years of experience.
George
in
has
combat
15 years of
He competed.
experience.
It's just like Ryan Buckner matchmaker. Okay, who the fuck is this guy? Have you competed? Like, what do you know about MMA? What kind of thing. So it took me a little while to kind of gain respect by some of my peers and coaches and whatnot. But I feel like 2 years in now, I'm doing.
I think the results speak for themselves. I mean, when you look at these rising stars, matchups and these performances, they're all well-matched fights, and you've done a great job.
I do think you're gonna.
Here it comes.
This is what it is. I think you should do a fight.
Me?
Yes.
It's in the back of my head.
Here's why.
sometimes.
Here's why. I've had this conversation with other promoters, right? Here's why. You will never know what your athletes are going through until you do it. You will never know. And then once you have that information, you will have a whole new, unique perspective that most promoters and people in those shoes will never understand.
I have an idea. He has a twin brother. How about if we have him fight his brother?
No,
Would that be
they've
good?
been fighting their whole life.
What kind of dad is this, man? Like,
I have a better idea.
Go for it.
Find another promoter, another matchmaker,
Can I tell
and
you
a co-promotion.
what? Let
Sign me up. I'll do that.
father and son, because there's someone I'd like to fight. Like
Name drop
people
them.
like
Name drop
No, I
them.
won't do
Name
that.
drop
I won't.
them.
But we could do a senior citizens battle.
No,
I think
but
I've got some
I'm
years on
being
him, but-
serious because think about that.
Yeah.
You will now know what it means to actually have that build up a fight week.
Yeah.
You will now know what it feels like to have your hand wraps backstage. You will know what it feels like to have your music drop in the way, like, because that is an experience that most people think they know what's happening, that you will never know until you're actually in there.
So I did some competitions when I was younger, but nothing to the scale of what we're doing, you know. Not bright lights like that, but yeah, maybe we could build this as a father and son, you versus someone, and
Listen, this new year,
versus another
I've been
promoter.
working out every day at the gym. I'm really getting myself back in shape, but it's always something that's kind of been in the back of my head. I mean, I've trained combat sports since I was 5 years old.
Different.
No, I 100% know, but it's something I would like to try and see if I can, really
Perform under
do
the
that
lights
thing,
and see-
yeah.
No, look, hold on. Like, there's no try or see if I can. It's one of those things like I go back to the same thing.
I want this.
See, that's rad.
You know why? He's got a very strong friend base. We would sell the venue out. I don't care if Ryan gets
But
his
that's
ass
also
kicked.
part of it, right? Can
No,
you
but I don't
imagine
care if
the
he
support
loses.
that
I
you'll
just want
get?
to sell the place out.
Now, also think about this.
I'm not
Think
losing.
about the respect that you'll get from the inner community.
No, for sure.
And I'm not saying that as like, hey, because they're not respecting you what you do. I'm saying you go out there and you're going to put yourself on the line to show them that like you are actually about it too.
Yeah.
That
could be
it's a
cool.
whole different approach.
I'll fucking do it. And I totally agree with what you're saying. I get that whole approach
Yeah,
to
that
it.
could be cool.
So,
See?
just gotta figure out who I'm gonna fight.
We just got to stack
We'll bring
it
in
up.
the-
Do I
Well-
match make my own fight? How's that work?
Yes.
But look, here's the thing. But look, you have other matchmakers. You have George. You have,
we could
but
do it.
at the same time, it's like it's not even about matchmaking at this point. It's about the message that it leaves.
No,
Yeah.
I totally get that. I would love, to
I'll come back and I'll fight
for the
you.
people that are fighting for.
Yeah, you and I.
We'll do
you
a
and I.
senior. Yeah.
You and I. You and I. Yeah, you and I.
Remember last content I was messing with you? You got a little tired, man. I don't want to. Come on. No, but I totally agree with that, and it's something that's been in the back of my head because I do love the sport, and I'm yet to fully, the competing side ever experience something like that. My mom might kill both of you for recommending me to fight because
Oh,
she
his
didn't
mom-
even let me compete. in
I'll be
jiu-jitsu
honest with
growing
you.
up.
Like, so I wanted him to compete when he was younger. My wife's like, nope, I'm fine with him training, but I don't ever want to see
Even
him
tackle
competing.
football, she didn't let me play when I was like in 8th,
Yeah.
7th, 8th grade.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Vicky.
No, it's okay. Now I'm a grown up. I can do whatever I want. So
Look, I don't know. My wife exerts a lot of control over my kids, even though they're
I-
all grown. So I
Well,
don't
I'm
know
very
if
aware
that
how
could
that
happen.
works.
Yeah. Well, this has been good, man. We really appreciate you sitting down with
Absolutely.
us. I just want to say thank you for all that you do for the combat sports community.
Appreciate
You
it.
do
Thank
a
you.
lot. I love also what you do for the community, Chad. So thank you, brother.
Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
and I want to end this chat, if you don't mind, maybe just a message to the younger generation. I think this whole podcast was amazing, inspirational, telling people to, be confident, right? Don't let that inner voice in your head take over. But if you want to leave one last message to everyone.
I mean, I think you just did it, right? Like you just kind of let it.
but so much
you know,
better
like
under.
no,
No,
he's
but
so
look,
much
I'm
better with
serious.
his words. He's very well spoken, if you want to them. But
The thing is like I've never been a good speaker my whole life. I've been a guy that's always avoided things on stages and platforms, and I think if I were to leave anything outside of what you just said about the choices, is that whatever you think you can't do, you're right. Whatever you think you can, you're also right. And so it's your choice on what you do with how you're thinking and what you do next. And it's a choice, and that's where it goes. Make a choice. Being a champion is a choice. Make a choice.
Champion's mindset, bro.
That's it.
Where can the people buy the book?
So the book right now is on Amazon. The audiobook is available. Actually, I guess, I'm rewriting the whole book.
what?
Yeah, I know. I'm adding more content. I'm adding updated information, the things that people wanted to hear more about. I'm going to do the audiobook in my voice. I'm going to be the one that reads it. So that way, my passion comes out in the audiobook.
I think that's amazing. Right.
And then I'm also writing my new book, Shut Up and Win. And it's a little bit different angle. It's on the coaching side of it. So I started writing that book as well. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Chad. Thanks for spending time with us, my man.
appreciate it. Thanks.
All right.
Had a lot
Thanks,
of fun.
brother.
Boom.
Awesome.